Oh, Buddha's head is cut off. There we go. I think this is good right here. Yes, that's good right here. Okay. Hello, Robert. Hello, friends. We'll give it a couple minutes, as always, and then we'll get started. I'm just going to step away here. As you can see, we're back in the Vipada in New York City. So back to the old new setup. Okay. Let's see. Sean, welcome, Sean, John. I'm sure Audrey is there too. Sean, John, Douse, Christine. I'm sure Christine's husband is also there. And Luke. Oh, we have another Aussie. We have another Aussie with us. Our Oceania group is growing. 2 Aussies and a Kiwi. Yeah, well, every once in a while, Bante Pamutu and I need to duke it out a little bit, you know. It's okay. This is the way it goes, right? Because it is a posita. So, but every Monday is Dhammapalooza, whether it's a posita or not. All right. So audio's fine, video's fine, everything's coming in good for everybody. I lost my mouse. I don't know where my mouse is, so I'm using the laptop pad thing. So you're gonna have to bear with me while during Dhammapalooza. All right, very good. Okay, so let's get started with some chanting. All right. We're going to do Maggaseka Chanting Book, page 99. How about that? Let me put it in the chat for you all. Welcome, Bella and Gautam. Hello, Lakeisha. Welcome. Okay. So we'll get started with our chanting. How do I? That's right. Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Sukho viveko tuttassa sutta dhammassa passato. Avyapajjang sukhang loke pannabhute susamyamo. Sukha viragata loke kaman samattikamo. Asmimanassayo vineo etang ve paramang sukang sabbang paravasang dukang sabbang issarayang sukang sadharane vihanyanti yoga hi duratikama dugatio jahe Arakatena kayena mechaditti gatena chahtina midha bibhutena vasang marasa gacchati tasmarakita chittassa sammasankappa gocharo sammaditti pure karo nyatvana uddayabayang Tinamidha bibbo bhikkhu sabbadugatiyo jaheti sukarang sadhuna sadhu sadhu papena dukarang papang papena sukarang papang ariye dukarang. All right, now the English. Blissful is detachment. Blissful is detachment for one who is content. For one who has learned Dhamma and who sees. Blissful is freedom from anger in the world, restraint towards living creatures. Blissful is passionlessness in the world, the overcoming of sensual desires, but the abolishing of the conceit I am, that is truly the supreme bliss. All subjection to another is painful, full mastery is bliss. Partners share in affliction. Bonds are difficult to overcome. Forsake bad destinations. With an unguarded body and encumbered by wrong views, overcome by lethargy and torpor, one goes along in the power of Mara. So let one's mind be guarded. Let one's domain be right thought. By putting right view to the forefront, by understanding rise and fall, and overcoming lethargy and torpor, a bhikkhu will forsake all bad destinations. For the good to do what is good is easy. For the bad to do what is good is difficult. For the bad to do what is bad is easy. For the noble to do what is bad is difficult. This first line here is, in my opinion, one of the most profound lines in all of the suttas. Abolishing of the conceit I am is the highest bliss. Right? So the Buddha intricately ties in the idea of propagating this person, this being, right? This I am. That literally is dukkha. That literally is suffering, right? When you can let it go. When you I am, abolishing the conceit I am is the highest bliss. That is so wonderful, especially if you get far enough in your meditation where you start to understand anatta and you start to see it and you actually start to experience a little bit of that bliss. You're just like, oh yeah, Buddha was right. I like where this is going. This is going great. All right. Let's see. Okay, friends. All right, very well. So welcome everybody to another Dhammapalooza, a festival of Dhamma, Monday night. Instead of directly competing with Monday Night Football during the winter and tonight with poor Bhante Pamuto. But every Monday night, as long as I'm in a place that has internet and is not bothering anybody during my nomad travels, but every Monday night, here we are at this time for Dhammapalooza, a 2-hour festival of Dhamma, where we do a variety of Dhamma-related activities. We just did some chanting, and later on we're going to do some guided meditation. In between, who knows what's going to happen, right? This is a community event, right? This is the Magga Seka, the Student of the Path community, comes together every Monday night here on this stream to be together, to discuss Dhamma, to share Dhamma, right? This is not a come and listen to Bhante J talk for 2 hours. That's not what this is, right? This is a community event. So what that means is you can always feel free to talk to each other in the chat. As a matter of fact, I encourage it. Get to know your fellow Kanyalamitas, talk to each other in the chat. Even if I'm answering a question or giving a talk or something like that, that doesn't bother me. That's not interrupting me. So definitely feel free to talk to each other, get to know each other in the chat, right? Build the community, and if you're new, you can become part of the community here. All right, so you're welcome to engage with us. Now, most of you know that what I like to do is, now, of course, I have suttas backed up. I can talk about, 20 or 30 different Buddhist topics. It's not a big deal. I can always have something to do. But what I like to do is I like to give you guys say in how this shapes, right? So for the next couple of minutes, if you have a topic you'd like me to talk about or the community to talk about, put that in the chat. If you have a question you'd like me to try to answer, put that in the chat, right? So we'll see what people say. If you have questions, if you have a topic you'd like for me to discuss about Buddhism, meditation, about monastics, these topics, about Dhamma, feel free to put that in the chat. And while I'm waiting in the chat, we'll see how things are going. We have a good showing right off the bat tonight, which is good. So and sometimes the chat goes a little bit longer. It takes a while to come up. And also, usually what happens is as soon as I start to break out a sutta, everybody decides to have a question. It's like, I don't know. I think that for this community, there's a little bit too many people who don't want to listen to suttas. We'll see what happens. But I have some suttas in my holster, in my back pocket. The chat seems to be quite empty. Either that or it just hasn't come through yet. One of the things that Bhante Ji always said, and I agree 100% with, is what he would tell me when he started throwing me up in front of crowds to teach. He says, remember to teach what the Buddha taught, not what you teach, right? And this is why I always prefer, if possible, to read a sutta, right? I always prefer for us to hear directly the words of the Buddha. Now, of course, when I give my talks, I also, I'm not just making things up. I'm always, based in the suttas. But even still, it's so much better to just hear directly from the suttas themselves. Dao says, oh, something funny. I remember hearing something about hateful or delusional types of people. It sounded interesting. So yes, this is not from the suttas, but this is from the Visuddhimagga. This is from the commentarial by Theravada Bible that was created by Venerable Buddhaghosa about 1,000 years ago. And so he basically what has developed. It's kind of like a Buddhist personality quiz in a way, right? So there's this is taking the three characteristics. No, not the three characteristics. The three poisons, right? Greed, hatred, and delusion. Lobha, dosa, moha, right? So there are people who now everybody has greed, hatred, and delusion, but what Buddhaghosa says here is there are people who are more greed types. There are people who are more anger types. There are people who are more delusional types. And when I first heard it, I was kind of like, yeah, this is kind of, what is this? Like a MySpace Facebook quiz? Like this is kind of silly. But I've actually come around to it. It's not really, it's not really a thing. But I kind of see myself, that I do have, of greed, hatred, and delusion. I'm definitely a greed type. Right? I'm not really an anger type. I'm not really an aversive type. I'm an attachment type. I mean, with my food issues, and you'd think that with all the death that I've seen, the people, my wife and my grandparents and friends and all the people that I've watched die, you'd think that I would not be as much of an attachment to people as I am, but it's there. Like if I have like a good weekend with somebody, like, and I might not ever see them again, like I want to like let's connect via Facebook or something like that. Like I see that there's that attachment in me, that greed. Like I don't want to like lose touch with people, right? So yeah, in that regard, with between the food and between everything else, I would definitely kind of think if we have to go by this, that I'm definitely a greed type. For sure. Oh yeah, those personality quizzes I remember those personality quizzes in like the 90s. Yeah, well, before social media, for sure. Oh, but yeah, yeah, this is, if we're going back to Buddhaghosa, yeah. Uh, all right. Oh, hello, Ian. Well, welcome. All right. Let's read a sutta about the aggregates. How about that? Why don't we do that? Let's see here. So let's do a short one. We'll do one from the Samyutta Nikaya. Robert, as I said, all of us have greed, hatred, and delusion. This is just saying that some people are more. I've met some delusional type. There's some people who are really kind of out there, and I'm not even talking necessarily that they're mentally ill, but they're just really deluded. If there's greed type, if there's an attachment type, and an aversive type, there's definitely delusional types. All right. So let's read this sutta. This is a small one, so we can read a couple. Five aggregates is always a good topic. All right. And the Samyutta Nikaya is always a great place to read from. Okay, so 2248, the aggregates. At Savatthi, bhikkhus, I will teach you of the five aggregates, and the five aggregates subject to clinging. Ah, what's the difference? Listen to that. And what bhikkhus are the five aggregates? whatever kind of form there is. Let me get the Pali going here too. I don't know why it's not showing me the Pali as well. I'm just going to take a second here. What is this? Bhikkhu Bodhi translation? I don't see the Pali. Maybe it's Bhikkhu Bodhi translation. I don't know. Anyway. So, and what bhikkhus are the five aggregates? Whatever kind of form there is, whether past, future, or present, internal or external. So internal, your form; external, forms outside, other people, other beings, etc. Right? Gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near. This is called the form aggregate. Whatever kind of feeling there is, this is called the feeling aggregate. And this is the same thing. Internal, external, far or near, right? Past, present, or future, etc. Whatever kind of perception there is, this is called the perception aggregate. Whatever kind of sankharas, volitional formations there are, these are called volitional formations aggregate. Whatever kind of consciousness there is, whether past or future or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, this is called the consciousness aggregate. These bhikkhus are called the five aggregates. So we have form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. And what bhikkhus are the five aggregates subject to clinging? Upadana kanda. Whatever kind of form there is, whether past, future, or present, far or near, that is tainted. That can be clung to. This is called the form aggregate subject to clinging. Whatever kind of feeling there is that is tainted, that can be clung to. This is called the feeling aggregate subject to clinging. Whatever kind of perception there is that is tainted, that can be clung to. This is called the perception aggregate subject to clinging. Whatever kind of volitional formations there are that are tainted, that can be clung to. These are called the volitional formations aggregate subject to clinging. Whatever kind of consciousness there is, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, that is tainted, that can be clung to. This is called the conscious aggregate subject to clinging. These bhikkhus are the five aggregate subject to clinging. So, can anybody tell me in which very, very important place in very, very important Dhamma the five aggregate subjects to clinging are? Who can tell me what they are? Anybody? Jim. No. Well, yes and no. Dependent origination, yes. But no, well, what I'm thinking about is the first noble truth. First noble truth. What is dukkha? Aging is dukkha. Death is dukkha. Sorrow, pain, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are dukkha. Not getting what one wants is dukkha. Being separated from the beloved is dukkha. Having to deal with those we don't like is dukkha. In short, the five aggregates subject to clinging are dukkha. When we cling to these five aggregates, it's the same thing as I am, right? Literally, when we cling to the five aggregates, when we have created this I am, we have literally created dukkha. Right? It's very important. So the five aggregates are just the five aggregates. They are literally just like the constituent parts of this psychophysical organism. But when we cling to them, that's when we create our problem. That's when we create suffering. There's khandha and there's upadana khandha. Two different things. The khandhas are just the khandhas. Elaine says, do you mean seeing? What do you mean by that, Elaine? I'm not sure. So let's read another sutta. This one's a bit longer, but so the Samyutta Nikaya, right, is grouped by topic. So there is literally a whole Samyutta of 100 suttas or so that are all just on the five aggregates. So we have lots to choose from. But let's do this one. I like this one, Nakula's father, because this combines what I've been saying, right? This is a very good one. Let me somehow see if I can't get this all. There we go. Again, I'm not using a mouse, so I'm a little handicapped right now. All right, that should be it. Anybody else? Is the stream still going? It looks to me like the stream is still going and people are here. What do you mean by dropped? The video? Oh. So let's read about Nakula's father. I don't know. Could be my internet, could be your internet. I don't know. But let's continue to read. We'll learn more about the five aggregates. So I have heard at one time the Buddha was staying in the land of the Bhaggas on Crocodile Hill, as opposed to Crocodile Rock, in the deer park at Basakala's wood. Then the householder Nakula's father went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to the Buddha, "Sir, I'm an old man, elderly and senior. I'm advanced in years and have reached the final stage of life. My body is ailing and I'm constantly unwell. I hardly ever get to see the esteemed mendicants. May the Buddha please advise me and instruct me. It will be for my lasting welfare and happiness." That's so true, householder. That's so true. For this body is ailing, trapped in its shell. If anyone dragging around this body claim to be healthy, even for a minute, what's that but foolishness? So this is interesting. Right? The Buddha is not saying that this is what you say when you're old. Right? This Buddha is saying when you have a body, this is, if you claim to be healthy for a minute, you're foolish. Interesting, huh? You should train like this. Though my body is ailing, my mind will be healthy. That's how you should train. And then the householder, Nakula's father, approved and agreed with what the Buddha said. He got up from his seat, bowed, and respectfully circled the Buddha, keeping him on his right. Then he went up to Venerable Sariputta, bowed, and sat down to one side. Sariputta said to him, "Householder, your faculties are so clear, and your complexion is pure and bright. Did you get to hear a Dhamma talk in the Buddha's presence today? What else, sir, could it possibly be? Just now the Buddha anointed me with the deathless ambrosia of a Dhamma talk." Isn't that's very poetic? The Buddha anointed me with the deathless ambrosia of a Dhamma talk. I like that. But what kind of ambrosial Dhamma talk has the Buddha anointed you with? So Nakula's father told Sariputta all that happened and said, "That's the ambrosial Dhamma talk that the Buddha anointed me with. But didn't you feel the need to ask the Buddha a further question?" This is Sariputta asking. "Sir, how do you define someone ailing in body and ailing in mind, and someone ailing in body and healthy in mind?" All right, so the Sariputta is like, okay, so you didn't ask the Buddha how you're supposed to be healthy in mind? Which is a good question, actually. And so the householder obviously realizes, duh, maybe like a little bit of a facepalm. And so he says, "Sir, we would travel a long way to learn the meaning of this statement in the presence of Venerable Sariputta." May Venerable Sariputta himself please clarify the meaning of this. "Well then, householder, listen and pay close attention. I will speak." "Yes, sir," replied Nakula's father. Sariputta said this: "And how is a person ailing in body and ailing in mind? It's when an uneducated, ordinary person has not seen the noble ones and is neither skilled nor trained in qualities of the noble ones. They've not seen good persons and are neither skilled nor trained in the qualities of a good person. Now, here we go. They regard form as self. The conceit I am. Self is having form. This form is me. I have form. Form in self or self in form. They're obsessed with the thought, I am form and form is mine. But that form of theirs decays and perishes, which gives rise to sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. Right? So we were like, this is my body. This is my form. It's great. I can do whatever I want with it. And then it falls apart and you suffer. Right? They regard feeling, sensation as self. And self as having feeling. Feeling in self or self in feeling. They're obsessed with the thought, I am feeling, feeling is mine. This pain is mine. This pleasure is mine, right? But that feeling of theirs decays and perishes, which gives rise to sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. They regard perception as self. This is one of the worst ones. Self is having perception. Perception in self or self in perception. They're obsessed with the thought, I am perception, perception is mine. But their perception of theirs decays and perishes, which gives rise to sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. Not only does your perception decay and perish, but it's also many times wrong. And because you have a wrong perception of a situation, you act in a wrong way, which causes suffering. Right? This is one of the things that I learned as I got deeper into my meditation, how often my perception of what is happening is off. Right? You can't just automatically believe. You can't just automatically trust your perception of what's happening when you're in a situation. You have to question that perception. That person did such and such. Well, did they really? You've perceived this, but is it true? Maybe you need to investigate that a little bit. Right? This is important. No perception, right? You should automatically accept. You should always question. Same thing with your thoughts. That's where mental formations come in. Mental formations, sankharas, more modernly translated as, well, let's see. Bhante Sujato is translating them as choices instead of mental formations here. They regard choices as self. So this is, we're going even deeper. So this is the formulations, the formations, the volitional formation. So what the volition means of your will, it's an active will. So this is something that you are creating with your mind, right? This is your choices, your how you choose to act. But this is also the thing, this self that you're building in your mind, right? This is anything related to acts of will with the mind that you create, formations, putting together something. That's what a sankhara is, right? Things are coming together. So they're obsessed with the thought, I am choices, and choices are mine. But those choices of theirs decay and perish, which give rise to sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. They regard consciousness as self, and self as having consciousness. Consciousness in self, or self in consciousness. They're obsessed with the thought, I am consciousness. Consciousness is mine. But that consciousness of theirs decays and perishes, which gives rise to sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. That's how a person is ailing in body and ailing in mind. And how is a person ailing in body and healthy in mind? It's with an educated, noble disciple. Let me see. I'm going to just check the chat here before we can continue on here. So we have some more Crocodile Rock references. Yes. When I do these things, you get a glimpse into my musical mind. How my mind connects everything with music, with songs and things like that, right? And thoughts will arise in my mind, and then those thoughts will be completed with song lyrics. That's just how it goes. Ay. All right. So Sean says, Bhante, how about self in deeds done? Yeah, well, that's also technically sankharas as well, right? Because acts of mind are deeds, right? So we get attached to, I have built this business. I have been a teacher for 20 years. I have, done such and such, whatever, right? We get attached to these things. And we use them as part of our identity. All right. And how is a person ailing in body and healthy in mind? It's when an educated noble disciple has seen the noble ones and is skilled in the training and the teachings of the noble ones. They've seen good persons and are skilled and trained in the teachings of good persons. They don't regard form as self. There you go. Self is having form, form and self are self and form. They're not obsessed with the thought, I am form, form is mine. So when their form decays and perishes, it doesn't give rise to sorrow, lamentation, pain, stress, and sadness and distress. They don't regard feelings as self. Self is having feeling, feelings in self, or self in feelings. They're not obsessed with the thought, I am feeling, feeling is mine. So when that feeling of theirs decays and perishes, it doesn't give rise to sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. They don't regard perception as self. Self is having perception, perception in self or self in perception. They're not obsessed with the thought, I am perception, perception is mine. So when that perception of theirs decays and perishes, it does not give rise to sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. They don't regard choices as self. Self is having choices, choices in self or self in choices. They're not obsessed with the thought, I am choices. Choices are mine. So when those choices of theirs decay and perish, it doesn't give rise to sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. They don't regard consciousness as self. Self is having consciousness. Consciousness in self or self in consciousness. They're not obsessed with the thought, I am consciousness, consciousness is mine. So when that consciousness of theirs decays and perishes, it doesn't give rise to sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. This is how a person is ailing in body and healthy in mind. This is what the Venerable Sariputta said. Satisfied, Nakula's father was happy with what Sariputta said. All right. So we see here that the difference, right? This is all about the five aggregates, right? This is all about the five aggregates, the khandas and the upadana khandas, right? When we see them as me, mine, myself, we attach them, we grasp them, we build this character, we build this being around them, then we suffer. That's the way it goes, right? We are simply the five aggregates. We're simply processes, right? That's all we are. We add extra layers onto it. We cling to these five aggregates like we're playing with Play-Doh, right? The five aggregates are the Play-Doh. They're just simply the causes and conditions have put these clumps. That's what a khanda is. It's a clump. That's what an aggregate is. A clump. Things that are clumped together, right? Like Play-Doh. And so we put our Play-Doh and we make all kinds of, we make our little character out of our Play-Doh, right? And we build this edifice out of these five aggregates. My name is Joe. For 36 years, my name is Joe, and Joe liked this, and Joe didn't like that. Now I'm Bhante J, and Bhante J likes this and doesn't like that, right? So we build this, and all the while we're building this, creating this character with our Play-Doh, all we're doing is just building more suffering for us. That's all we're doing. Hello, Gray. Gray is our friend from New Zealand. We have a new friend from Australia with us today. Douse. Well, yeah, Douse, being a former gamer, anybody who's a gamer, you can understand when I talk about it's basically like we're creating a video game character. Like we're about to embark on a quest in a fantasy land, a grand quest. So I'm going to create my wizard. And these days you can choose, like, what they look like and what kind of hair they have and what the color eyebrows, and and if they're buff or they're fat, and all these things you can choose. Then you can choose their background, like where they're from, and do all these kind of things, right? And so that's like how we enter the world. We enter the world and we're given a little bit of a backstory, right? Our parents, where our ancestors are from, etc., right? And then we're given a little bit from our parents, but then at a certain point, when we're old enough, we start to build that character ourselves, right? With our likes and our dislikes. You can even see that with like a 2-year-old, with like a 3-year-old. Like even young children have personality. You can see it, and that personality is built upon over time, and it gets more refined and more subtle as we get older, and we're able to mold and craft that personality. Christine is saying her husband says rebirth is like getting a randomly generated body or character, like in a game. Yeah. Yep. Although you actually have more control over in a game. You can literally, you choose your sex or whatever, but then after that, it's just like, whatever you want. But yeah, when it comes to rebirth, you have no say over that. Whatever you are next life. This life I'm a human male. Next life I'm an alien female spider or something like that. Who the heck knows? Sean has a question. Hey, Bante, what is a good way of unclinging to the perception aggregate? Paying attention to your perceptions, right? You can't just say, I hereby uncling to the perception aggregate. No, you have to start to realize when your perception is wrong, right? Like one of the things that I realized was whenever you're in a conversation with somebody, if somebody were to like be on the outside and be able to like look at the perception of the two people in a conversation, you'll see that their perception of what is happening is totally different, or at least very different, right? One person perceives that this conversation is about this. Another person perceives this conversation is about that, right? Perception is unreliable in that way, right? This is why, in modern times, we realize that eyewitness accounts are basically almost always very, very unreliable, right? In the old days, someone's eyewitness account could put somebody in jail for life, but these days, not so much. Right? Because we realize how unreliable our perceptions are. So paying attention to how unreliable your perceptions are is a good way of letting go of the attachments for that perception, right? Just try to see that. Try to pay attention to your perception, right? You can perceive a situation, and then you talk to some people. It's like, is this, I'm seeing things this way. Is this the way it is? And they're like, no, it's this way, right? And you realize, oh yeah, my perception was way off. So this is something that you have to see. It's a gradual unveiling over time, right? The more mindful, the more very minutely mindful you are of your mind and body as you're engaging with the world, with people in the world, the more you see this. The more you see the consequences of your actions, the more you see your perceptions and how things that arise within your mind and how that impacts how you act, right? You see these things. Hello, Abaya. No, we were working with what sutta were we working with here? We were working with the aggregates in the Samyutta Nikaya, the aggregate section. Nakula's father, literally the first one and the second one we did in the aggregate section, and Devadaha. All right. So we're coming close to the end of our first hour. Any other questions, topics, anything to go over? We've been going over the topics of the five aggregates and the self, not self. Very good, Sean. This is, I'm trying to make my questions good on Student of the Path in the spirit of what you say, checking my perception with others. Yes. Well, see, this is the important thing. This is, you know, in the Kesaputta Sutta or Kesamutta Sutta, depending on if you're using the Pali for the for Thai or Sri Lankan, right? In this sutta, it's often also called the Kalama Sutta, but that's not what it's called. You can't look up the Kalama Sutta. This sutta is where we get the what I think Bhikkhu Bodhi calls the Buddha's, or Bhikkhu Bodhi or Thanissaro says it's the Buddha's charter on free inquiry. I don't remember. That was an old way of thing. And we see where it says, you know, don't go by reports, by books, don't go by what your teacher says, don't go by all these things, right? But when you know for yourself that such and such an action will lead to the benefit of for myself and others, not to harm for myself and others, then do that action, right? So that means, then people think, well, that just means, oh yeah, that just means that I just look and see and then I do it myself. But there's something missing they didn't see. They say, and is approved by the wise, right? This is why we see in the sutta where the Buddha was talking about being with wise people, right? Checking your perceptions. That's why Kalyanamitas are so important. That's what Kalyanamitas are for, right? For encouragement and you know, and to help you to stay on the path, to stay in on the Noble Eightfold Path, but also to check your perceptions against, right? Other wise people. That's so important. checking your perceptions against people who you consider to be wise and worthy of doing so, right? That doesn't mean that you should just automatically agree or believe with what they say, right? But you should still check your perception against other, there are psychologists that will say that, like, a large part of human sanity is connected to bouncing your ideas off the group, right? Like, human sanity is, what's that word? It's a business word. Is like delegated. Like, part of your sanity is you, but also part of your sanity is the group, right? So it's interesting because, I'm sure in these days, right? Maybe, especially with how divided things are, you might fall into one group or the other, and you feel like, wow, I feel sane, and the people I know are sane, but these people are insane, right? We have this kind of and that's kind of dangerous. That feeds a lot of the us versus them. Really, we're all freaking insane all the time because we're all full of greed, hatred, and delusion, right? But it's important to it's important to build. If you're going to build your character, what you should build is your party, right? Like a video game party, like a role-playing game party. Try to surround yourself with, as much as possible, only good, wise people. Lay people, monks, bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, whatever. Just try to, as much as possible, surround yourself with wise, with panditas, not balas, not fools, right? Minimize your contact with foolish people. Maximize your contact with wise people. It's very important. This will keep you on the path. This will keep you healthy, wealthy, and wise. All right. Let's see here. Looking at the chat. Ian says, how is the self a non-enlightened perceives different than the residual self that still remains when someone in a stream entered and above? This sometimes confuses me. Excuse me. I'm just going to drink some water here. How is the self a non-enlightened person perceives different than the residual self that still remains when someone is a stream enter? Okay. So, as best as I can understand, we, this being, as best as I can answer this, when you be an awakened being, right? Like, there's a perception like an awakened being kind of becomes this like automaton, but this is not the case. Like, if you read the suttas, the Buddha has a personality, right? If you listen to if you hear the stories and listen to the teachings of Ajahn Chah, who obviously, whether he's awakened, I don't know. But, everybody and their mother who's in his tradition wants to say he's awakened. But Ajahn Chah has a personality. Like, these highly attained beings, right? The character that they built up is still there. They just don't attach to it. They just don't accept it as like self. Like, there's no, this is just causes and conditions, right? Part of who I am is related to the fact that I'm from New Jersey. Part of who I am is related to the fact that I'm come from an Italian family, right? It's just all of these causes and conditions. Part of who I am is related to the fact that I was, not really a bit nerdy and didn't have a lot of friends in high school. All of these things impact who I have become, right? And also my choices in relation to those things, right? So all of that is still there, right? Just like pain is still there. You can see in the suttas, the Buddha has pain, right? The difference is that mentally they are healthy, right? To go with the sutta we just dealt with. Mentally they are healthy, meaning that they're not attaching to this as, oh, this is me, this is mine, this is myself, right? So when this body has pleasure, they're not attached. When this body has pain, they're not attached, right? It's simply as that, right? They still have their personality, right? They still have the causes and conditions that have arisen, but they simply have no attachment to it. They are not deluded into thinking that this is really me. Now, even a stream enterer, the only being who has abolished the conceit I am is an awakened being. Even a stream enterer, a once returner, or a non-returner, they still have that conceit I am. It's still there. They might not, they've looked at everything so far and they've not seen a self in anything, but they're still kind of like, there might be a self somewhere. I still think I am. Right? The conceit is still there. The conceit does not fully go away until you're an awakened being. Just looking at the chat. Ian says, yes, he sure does. I guess in response to me talking about the Buddha having a personality. And so do all the monks and nuns in the poems. Yeah, exactly. All right. Since the chat is quiet, maybe we do some our guided meditation now. So what we'll do is we'll do our guided meditation, and then after that, we'll have about 25 minutes or so left. We can do some reading of the Samyutta Nikaya verses, which is what we like to do, which was what I have done here at many Dhammapaloozas. We'll do some reading, just light reading of some verses, and then we'll call it a night. So start by setting yourself in a comfortable. Grace says, my friend and I call it having accountability buddies. Yeah, it's basically accountability buddies. Instead of having accountability buddies for going to the gym or eating well or whatever, this is accountability buddies for the Noble Eightfold Path. All right. All right. Put yourself in a posture that is stable and comfortable for you. We'll begin by taking some time to scan through our body. We do this for two reasons. The first is to slowly bring our awareness from the external, right, from the room and the world around us and the chat and all these things, to slowly bring our awareness from the external to the internal, focusing more and more our awareness on this mind and this body. And the other reason is to be able to set our body up in a stable and comfortable position that will allow us to get deeper into our tranquil mind and to sit more comfortably for longer. So start by bringing your awareness to any sensation or feeling that you can find in your toes. Sometimes if you can't connect with anything, you can wiggle your toes. Or as we're scanning through the body, you can prompt yourself by asking, what do I see? What do I feel? When we talk about bringing our awareness to a part of the body, we're trying to bring our awareness to really focus in on whatever sensation arises. Try to be aware of that. Bring your awareness up through the feet, into the ankles. Pay attention to see if there is any uncomfortable or painful feeling that is already arising. As we scan through the body, if you see a painful feeling or an uncomfortable feeling, this is a sign, right? This is the time to adjust our posture to alleviate that. Because if you see a very minor feeling now, that minor feeling will become much larger and more unbearable later on. So for now, adjust your posture. Take as much time as you need to adjust your posture whenever you meditate, so that you can sit for longer without any movement or adjusting. Bring your awareness up through your calves to your knees. What is the feeling of the calves pressing against the floor, the cushion, or the chair? Bring your awareness up through your thighs. Make sure to be aware of how each part of the body you're scanning through impacts the balance of your posture. If there is an imbalance in the posture, that will cause pain and discomfort over time. So be aware of that. You can even use that as an object of meditation. This can help you to develop a stable and comfortable posture. Bring your awareness to your pelvis and hips and buttocks. If you're sitting on a cushion, it's important to check that your sits bones, the buttocks bones, are evenly distributed on a cushion or a chair. That the pelvis is positioned in a way that allows the spine to sit in a natural, neutral position, not causing any leaning or slouching. The lower body is like a foundation of a house. If the foundation is strong and firm, balanced, the house can rest comfortably. But if the foundation is not strong, not firm, crooked and imbalanced, then the house will also be so. So it's important to take time to set your foundation well. When you're done setting up your lower body foundation, bring your awareness up through your abdomen to the chest. Pay special attention to the spine. See if the spine is resting in its neutral position comfortably, or if the spine is leaning left or right, slouching back and forth. Pay attention to any imbalances and discomfort. Bring your awareness up to your shoulders, making sure that they're hanging loosely, not scrunched up and tight. Bring your awareness down through your elbows to your hands. The position of the elbows and hands can have a great impact on your posture. Try to be aware of where you choose to put your elbows and hands. How does it affect your posture? Are they in a comfortable and stable position? And finally, bring your awareness to the head. Just like the lower body is the foundation, like a triangle. The upper body is this next level. The head is like the cap, the top of the triangle, the top of the roof. If the lower body and the upper body are balanced, then the head will also rest comfortably, not slouching or leaning, the chin parallel to the floor. When you're done setting up your body in a comfortable and stable position, let the body go and take 3 deep silent breaths. And then let the breath go. From here on in, we do not wish to manipulate or control the breath in any way. We simply want to follow the breath, to investigate it, to watch as this body breathes in, this body breathes out. This body has been breathing from the moment you were born and will continue to do so until the second you die. It doesn't need you to do its job. Your job is simply to observe and investigate. If you feel most prominently the air coming in and out of the nostrils, you can place your awareness there. If not, that's okay. If you feel most prominently the rise and fall of the chest, you can place your awareness there. Or you can simply abide with the basic awareness of this body breathing in and out. Friends, we come to this meditation with many responsibilities, worries, and burdens. Family and friends, work and school. Many things that will seek to take attention from the breath. For the time of our meditation, we practice laying down our burdens, letting go. Just as the mighty Atlas from Greek mythology holds the world on his shoulders, so too do we each hold our world on our shoulders, a heavy burden. Lay your world down, like putting down a heavy backpack. Feel light and free as you follow the breath. As you're following your breath, your mind will become bored or distracted. Your mind will want to run away across the world or the galaxy to the past or the future, or an external distraction like a sound will arise. The mind will jump towards these things. This is normal. You did not fail or do anything wrong. This is simply the mind showing you how it works, showing you its craving. Whenever the mind runs away from the breath, once you start to realize this, it starts to slowly dawn on you that you've been distracted away. Marshal your mindfulness. Fully acknowledge that you've been distracted. Then practice letting go of the distraction. And thirdly, return to the breath. By letting go, this means that we don't want to get agitated and try to push it away or run away from it. Nor do we want to get attached to it and try to think about it more and enjoy it. We simply want to give it no energy. Let it be. Just as it arose, it will cease if we just let it go. So whenever you're distracted away, acknowledge, let go, and return over and over. Even if you're distracted 100 times in a minute, then acknowledge, let go, and return 100 times in a minute. The breath is our home base. It's always there waiting for us to return, to spend some time developing a calm and tranquil mind. Every once in a while, as you're following your breath, check in with the state of your mind. Is your mind becoming more calm and tranquil or not? As your mind does become more calm and tranquil, you may begin to see more subtle, refined characteristics of the breath. You may begin to see the impermanence of the breath. How sometimes the breath is long and deep or short and shallow. Try to observe the breath even more deeply. See how it's changing. Slowly begin to open your eyes, moving from the internal back out to the external, the room around you, the live stream, and your Kalyanamitas in the stream, on the chat. Take some time to examine your mind. What is the change in your mind from before the meditation and after. See what has changed and take some time to take stock in the meditation that you just had. What was it like? Were there any insights that arose? What did you learn? It's always good to take some time after the meditation to do this. And so for our last 20 minutes or so, if anything came up in your meditation that you'd like to ask me a question about, you're welcome to put that in the chat or a topic to discuss. And if there's nothing, then we can read from the verses. Maybe we'll start reading from the Dhammapada. I think that's what we'll do. We did that a long time ago. Elaine is saying there's a huge snowstorm here. I wish there was a huge snowstorm here. I love snowstorms. It is snowing a little bit. We got to walk. We went to Patimokkha to a local Thai place, a local Thai Wat. And we got to walk home in the dark in the snow. It was quite beautiful. Got to use my Sangati, my third robe, for what it's supposed to be, a cloak or a coat. John is saying, we only lost 1 or 2 Kalyanamitas during the meditation. Good job, everyone. John is pointing to something that is a well-established event that happens. That is, we drop off a lot of people when we do the guided meditation. And so he is quite happy that not that many people dropped off, which is also something that I'm happy about. So let's read from the Dhammapada, shall we? We'll read off of Sutta Central. We'll read, there's lots and lots of translations on Sutta Central, the Dhammapada, but my favorite and one of the best is Acharya Buddharakkhita's translation. We'll read from the first section, pairs. Mind precedes all mental states. Mind is their chief. They are all mind-wrought. If with an impure mind a person speaks or acts, suffering follows him like the wheel that follows the foot of the ox. Mind precedes all mental states. Mind is their chief. They are all mind-wrought. If with a pure mind a person speaks or acts, happiness follows with him like a never-departing shadow. This is very important, these lines, right? Especially the similes within them. Think about this ox that is attached to a cart, right? And this ox that has to lug around this heavy cart. You know, maybe the farmer is on the cart and whatever things that the farmer needs to be running around with in the cart, right? The ox is lugging this thing. The ox is attached. The ox can't escape it, right? And if you've ever done some like wheelbarrowing or something, or having like a cart behind you, sometimes even the wheel comes and nips you the back of your feet, which is not a pleasant experience. I have experienced this, right? So I can fully sympathize with this poor ox that is attached to this cart, right? And this is what a mind is like. That a mind that is full of greed, hatred, and delusion, right? This is this impure mind, this mind that is acting out of this, right? This is like this poor ox, right? But then there's the reverse. A mind that is acting out of, out of desires for letting go, out of goodwill, out of harmlessness. A mind that is acting out of wise, skillful action. It's like a shadow, right? The heavy mind is this mind, this ox lugging around this heavy load. But a mind, a peaceful, calm, quiet mind that is with goodness in it, is very light. It's not heavy at all. A shadow weighs nothing. The shadow does not weigh down on you, right? It's always there. It's just hanging out. It's very beautiful. This is something that should always be remembered, right? At Bhavana Society, the morning chanting, this is always in there. And the morning chanting that I have created for Maggaseka in the Maggaseka chanting book, it's also there, right? Because this is something that should be reflected upon daily. This is very important. The Dhammapada starts out with gangbusters right off the bat, right? And it keeps going. It starts out just some of the best lines of Dhamma in all of Buddhism are right in this first section. So, he abused me, he struck me, he overpowered me, he robbed me. Those who harbor such thoughts do not still their hatred. He abused me, he struck me, he overpowered me, he robbed me. Those who do not harbor such thoughts still their hatred. Okay? This is another very profound, very important pair here. Right? It's very easy for us, even if it's justified, even if somebody did abuse you and strike you and rob you and overpower you, it's very easy for us to feel justified in thinking like this way. This person did this to me. This person did that to me. But the Buddha is saying, if you just keep harping on that, if you don't let go of that, then your hatred will never be appeased. It will always be there, right? You are essentially, if you harbor those thoughts, if you build those thoughts up, then you are like the ox with the cart. All you're doing is just causing more suffering for yourself. Having a heavy, horrible mind. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help anybody. It's not denying that somebody has harmed you, or necessarily that you might need to take some action in regard to that to protect yourself. But this is talking about the mind, right? The tendency in the mind to have this righteous anger, right? Where the Buddha tells us in other places, right, that anger is like a honeyed crest. On the outside, it feels right, it feels good, but it has a poison root. It's poisonous. You're feeding off poison, right? So the Buddha wants us to still our hatred, not to feed it, not to grow it, but to let it go. And we have perhaps one of the greatest lines, right? Hatred is never appeased by hatred in this world. You can't appease. So what it means to appease, right? We can't appease hatred. We can't let hatred cannot be lessened, right? You can't fight hatred with hatred. It's not how it works. Only by non-hatred alone is hatred appeased. This is a law eternal. The Buddha is saying something very important here. He's saying that this is always the case. It is never not the case. Doesn't matter what time, what place. This is an eternal law, right? That hatred is never appeased by hatred, only by non-hatred. Right? This is an eternal law. Very important to understand. And so another great line. There are those who do not realize that one day we all must die. But those who do realize this settle their quarrels. This is an important thing. There are those who do not realize that one day we must die. Now, we think that, of course we know. Yeah, no. We really know. We know we're going to die. No, you don't. No, you don't. You really don't. You really don't know that you're going to die. I had this realization, right? Like, I remember it was, I forgot what it was. I got wrapped up in a video years ago, or a movie or something. And I realized, wait a second, during this time where I was unmindful, there was no death. Time didn't move. Like, I wasn't dying. I wasn't going to die. Right? And I realized, like, that's how we all live. This is why things like death are such a, are so negatively impact somebody, because people live, the average person lives like we're not going to die. And so we don't act skillfully. We don't realize, oh crap, this party's going to end. So why am I holding grudges towards people? Right? Why am I in these feuds with people over years? Why am I holding on to this anger? I'm going to freaking die. What's the point of this? Why am I holding on to this? Why am I wasting my time? Right? This is such a thing. Like, people, you hear about people who have regrets on their deathbed and things like this. Why am I wasting my time holding on to this? I'm going to die. It's not worth it. The time I have, it's not worth wasting my time with this. It's not worth it. Continuing on. Just as a storm throws down a weak tree, so does Mara overpower the man who lives for the pursuit of pleasures. So who is uncontrolled in senses, immoderate in eating, indolent and dissipated. This is a person who doesn't realize they're going to die. This is a person who's living unmindful, right? And Mara has you completely under Mara's control when you live in such a way. Just as a storm cannot prevail against a rocky mountain, so Mara can never overpower the man who lives meditating on the impurities, who is controlled in senses, moderate in eating, and filled with faith and earnest effort. By the way, if you have any comments or anything about these as we're going through, or want any kind of clarification, please feel free to type it in the chat. Now, this one is about monks. Whoever being depraved, devoid of self-control and truthfulness, should don the monk's yellow robe, he surely is not worthy of the robe. But whoever purged of depravity, well established in virtues and filled with self-control and truthfulness, he indeed is worthy of the yellow robe. Just because you put on a robe doesn't mean that you are worthy of it. You have to become worthy of the robe by your actions. There are some lay people who act more worthy of the robes than some monks do. That's the way it goes. There's later in the Dhammapada, maybe it's here, or maybe it's later in the Dhammapada. I think it's later, where the Buddha essentially says that, shaving your head and putting on a robe does not an ascetic make, does not a Brahmin make. This is also very important. Those who mistake the unessential to be essential, and the essential to be unessential, dwelling in wrong thoughts, never arrive at the essential. Those who know the essential to be essential, and the unessential to be unessential, dwelling in right thoughts, do arrive in the essential. This is like, somebody who thinks that, what are the movie stars doing? That is essential. What is going on in the pop culture? What is going on in the politics? What is going on in all these things? This is the most essential thing. Somebody who knows these are not the most essential things. Right? The most essential thing is I'm going to die. The most essential thing is, how do I act in this world? How do I live in a way that is beneficial to myself and others? That is not harmful to myself and others. That is the most essential thing. This is important. All right, so we're coming close to the end. We'll read a few more and then we will call it a night. We'll do our sharing of merits, final announcements, and end it. Just as rain breaks through an ill-thatched house, so passion penetrates the undeveloped mind. Just as rain does not break through a well-thatched house, so passion never penetrates the well-developed mind. The evildoer grieves here and hereafter. He grieves in both the worlds. He laments and is afflicted, recollecting his own impure deeds. The doer of good rejoices here and hereafter. He rejoices in both the worlds. He rejoices and exults, recollecting his own pure deeds. The evildoer suffers here and in hereafter. He suffers in both the worlds. The thought, evil have I done, torments him, and he suffers even more when gone to realms of woe. The doer of good delights here and hereafter. He delights in both worlds. The thought, good have I done. This is like Yoda. Good have I done. Evil have I done, right? Delights him. And he delights even more when gone to realms of bliss. Much though he recites the sacred texts, but acts not accordingly, that heedless man is like a cowherd who only counts the cows of others. He does not partake in the blessings of the holy life. Little though he recites the sacred text, but puts the teachings into practice, forsaking lust, hatred, and delusion with true wisdom and emancipation of mind, clinging to nothing of this or that of the world, he indeed partakes in the blessings of the holy life. So this meaning that if all you do is just read the suttas, but you don't practice what's in the suttas, then you will not gain the fruit of it. You have to know the suttas, you have to know the teachings, and then you put them into practice so that you both are skilled in understanding the teachings and in practicing the teachings. Very important. And with that, friends, I think we will do our sharing of merits. Let's see here. Okay. Dukkha patta chani dukkha, baya patta chani baya, soka patta chani soka, hontu sabbe pipanio, etavata cha mehi, sampadang punya sampadang, sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya, akasata chabumata deva naga mahiddika punyang tang anumoditva charang rakantu sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all those... I know the Pali and I forget and I stumble on the English. May all beings share this merit that we've thus acquired. That's it. For the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share in this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, friends, so we come to the end of another Dhammapalooza. So feel free to join us next week, same time. But also, if you'd like, Monday through Friday, at least while I'm here, Monday through Friday, we have morning monastery experience on this channel, the same place, the same stream, where we do a half hour of experiencing like if you would be in the morning at a monastery. We do some chanting, some precepts, a little Dhamma talk. It's a good way to start your day with some Dhamma. Very good. So come join us. Join us in the mornings, 8 a.m. Eastern, for our brief period of sharing some Dhamma and doing some chanting in the morning before work. Okay, friends, I think that's it. Until next time, Sukhi Hotu, may you be happy, practice well, and be well. May you have a spiritually successful and peaceful week. Hello, Iceland. Welcome. Good to, this is a name I'm not familiar with, but welcome, nice to meet you. And feel free to, excuse me, feel free to subscribe and click the bell and do all that. And then you'll know when we go live again. Every Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 8 to 10 p.m. And every morning, 8 a.m. So, all right, friends, have a good one.